Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we are talking about the Agatha Christie letter, the one that happened in 1971. And then we're talking about the sort of what was quote unquote the new Agatha Christie letter. Of course, Agatha Christie is dead, so she can't be on that letter, but it was within an open letter on July 2nd that appeared in the Times. So, with me to discuss that is the great historian Charles Coulombe. How you doing, Charles?
Very well, Connor. Thanks for having me back. Always good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. Now, you wouldn't you'd be like would you like 11 or 9 at the first Agatha Christie letter or for the Agatha Christie letter?
About 10 years old, back in
10.
71, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember anything about sort of the reaction to it? Like whether your parents had any reaction to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, my parents were very matter of fact about it. Uh, my dad, in particular, my mother as well, but my dad in particular, he was one of the things he constantly pointed out during all the changes was that, as he put it, obviously they were brought about by people without any understanding of human nature, human psychology, or anything else, which of course is the worst possible position for people who have quote unquote the pastoral care of souls. It's rather like a shepherd who doesn't know what sheep eat or how to take care of them, or that maybe wolves aren't good things for sheep to hang out with. Uh, and I mention this because one of the things that was made obvious to us by our parents was that the artistic, the philosophical, the intellectual damage that was being done to the church, and because it was being done to the church, to the world as a whole. And that my dad even pointed out on the folkloric level, because you think of how many around the world, how many places have various feasts and so forth that center ultimately around the Mass. They have a lot of paraliturgical and folk customs, but ultimately the center of it is the Mass. And a lot of that stuff got blown out of the water.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
I've been trying I've been trying to do less sort of a church politics type of thing, but when this happened, when the sort of the July 2nd, when the new petition came out, it seemed like kind of surreal. I was kind of amazed that this was kind of happening again, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it. Would you mind giving us sort of the background of why the 1971 letter, how that came about and why?
well, it came about because a lot of people, even outside the church, kind of took the church for granted as one of the pillars of Western society. Someone like T.S. Eliot, for instance, who's not one of the signatories because he was dead, but nevertheless, people of that sort, even if they didn't believe in the church as such, they believed in its importance as a sort of cultural and even to some degree spiritual guarantor of Western civilization they saw as collapsing. And with 2020 hindsight, we can say they were quite correct. Um, and this is an impulse that is common to an awful lot of people. I mean, take for example, if you will, the United Nations and their UNESCO. Now, UNESCO has two interesting lists. One is the World Heritage List, which is both built and natural heritage of the various countries that are considered to be so important that they're important not simply to each of the countries involved, but to mankind as a whole. Places ranging from the Grand Canyon of the United States to the pyramids of Giza, to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. These are seen as places by the UN that are so important they require protection for everybody, for everyone's sake, I should say. Well, they have a similar list of what is called intangible heritage, and those are mostly customs and ceremonies and ways of life that, and they've got things like the French culinary dinner, and various folk customs and so on and so forth, which they, in the opinion of UNESCO, is so important. They need to be protected on behalf of the entire world's population, because one way or another, in their, as far as they're concerned, they've contributed to the cultural good of the entire world. Well, I believe that as far as both the Agatha Christie people go and the signers of the second later declaration, they see the Tridentine Mass in exactly the same way, as something that is part of the intangible heritage of mankind. It has to be protected for that reason, and from which so much else is stemmed in terms of architecture, art, music. You can't go to any of the major cathedrals in Europe or Latin America, many of which are on the World Heritage list, and not see that they were built for the Tridentine Mass. And in those few cases where the altar that was built for that Mass has been taken out, the vandalism and barbarism of doing so is evident.
Yeah. And most of the original signatures were many of them or any of them Catholic, the original Agatha Christie letter?
A few of them were Catholic. Not that many, but a few. Evelyn Waugh, of course, was Catholic.
Oh, he signed it?
I believe so. Let me pull this up so I know what I'm talking about. I love it when that happens.
Tolkien would have still been alive? Would he? But
he did not sign it. He did not sign it, even though he was very much opposed to the new Mass.
Yeah.
And I suspect the reason he didn't sign it was because he was not a great believer in petitions.
Mm.
I think he believed that Catholics ought to be able to expect decent treatment from their leadership. Again, had he lived in our time, he would have realized that that's an interesting idea. Let's see who we got here. Harold Acton, he was Catholic. Vladimir Ashkenazi, no. John Baylor, no. Lennox Barkley, I don't know. Maurice Bora, don't know. Cyril Connolly was not Catholic. He might have converted later. Miles Fitz-Allen Howard was. Graham Greene was, barely.
Didn't he have a falling out with the church? I thought he did.
He did. That's why I say barely. He was reconciled, however. Compton Mackenzie was Catholic. Malcolm Muggeridge became Catholic later. Sean O'Foyland. I think, was Catholic.
He sounds Catholic.
Yeah, well. William Rees-Mogg was Catholic.
He was he's Jacob Rees-Mogg's father, right?
I think so. I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, he sure was.
Yeah.
Ralph Richardson, the actor, was Catholic. E.I. Watkin was Catholic. They're the only ones I can be sure.
How many names were on there? Roughly.
Boy, now I've got to spell. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58.
Okay. Or like, how many? What percentage do you think would have been roughly Catholic? Like
About a quarter.
quarter. Okay. So there. I mean, like 75% of these people aren't Catholic and merely see the Latin Mass as a cultural heritage. Now, Agatha Christie is picked out from a story that supposedly Paul VI saw her name and said, basically because of her books and stuff like that, because he liked her work, he granted the what's known as the Agatha Christie indult. Now,
Right.
is that true? Is that story?
Yep.
Okay, like,
Yep, it's true.
and
Could a pope be so petty?
Huh?
Oh, hard to believe. However, having written the history of the popes, I can say, yeah, a pope could be that petty.
Why was Agatha Christie such a draw to him? What was her sort of was it his generation? What was it? Do you like mystery novels that much?
Yeah. And I'm an Agatha Christie fan myself, and it had nothing to do with the Mass. I like Miss Marple and the Cute Poirot, so there you go.
It just seems so bizarre to me that this would make sort of liturgical, pastoral decisions, based on a mystery novelist.
It's better than the other reasons they made them.
Yeah.
When most of what you're doing is garbage anyway, why not do something decent? No, look, when if you've got a company that's supposed to be in the food business, and most of what they turn out is garbage, but it so happens that they don't in this one particular area because the guy likes the image of Colonel Sanders. Rejoice and be glad.
Okay, so don't. I mean, but this indult was only in England and Wales too. Like, I mean, it's not like it would have. It's not like it was affecting anything worldwide.
No, not in the slightest. In America, it didn't do us any good at all.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. Now, there's rumors about whether or not the Latin Mass will be prohibited or more restrictions put on it than already is, and that seems to be the thing that provoked this new Agatha Christie letter. But it's amazing to me that we like back in the 70s there were a lot of people that were ingrained in such the old culture, in old Christian culture. And even if they weren't religious themselves or Catholic themselves, I understand why they were more likely to see value in it. But we live in such a secularized, atheistic culture nowadays. I'm just amazed that we have a new set of, I guess, elite that are willing to, or that want to retain the Mass and the Latin Mass as for posterity. And some of the names are just like, people you really would not expect from from a political or social beliefs or anything like that to be supportive of this kind of thing. So can you talk a little bit about sort of what was your first reaction, first of all, to this to the letter and to another petition, basically?
Well, I wasn't surprised once it came out, because we do have quite a few people, especially in the film and music industry, who work with history. And if you have any work with history, if you have any knowledge of and love for history, then you know very well the role the Mass played, which is doubtless why so few people in the hierarchy, have any understanding of it, because that would be a little beyond them. If you don't know religion, it's a lot to expect knowing history of it. But Julian Fellows, for instance, signed it. And he's most famous as the author of Downton Abbey. Now, considering that in both America and Britain, most people's closest connection with history has been a combination of Game of Thrones and Downton Abbey. And of course, Game of Thrones is mythical, so that,
Are we sure?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's interesting, especially with him. It's not like he's had a it's not like his work, from what I can tell, has been necessarily that affected by the Latin Mass or something.
No, but he knows enough history to know the effect it had. I mean, one of the things in Downton Abbey was the fight over baptizing Sybil's daughter Catholic.
Yeah.
And in that season, there was the whole Catholic thing running through it, which is directly due to Julian Fellows, who is a Catholic.
Oh, wait, he is a Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that he was a Catholic. I thought, okay.
You thought he was like the Pope?
Charles.
What?
Oh, what? Okay. No, I just had no idea that he was inclined that way. Because I mean, there are a lot of random things that get brought up in Downton Abbey that are somewhat Catholic, but there's also your standard.
Yeah, but he's got to sell, doesn't he?
Your standard, gay drama.
He's got to sell, doesn't he? And it's got to be. Remember, if you look at most major media today, if there isn't a gay element, it's not going to be sold.
Well, it's not going to be. It's not always going to be bought either.
Well, no, it won't be bought, but it won't be sold.
Okay.
You see, remember, you've always got to pay attention to your masters at all times. When you live in something of a despotism, the desires of the rulership have to be, winked at the very least.
Well, it just seems like a lot of the people on the list have very much accepted their masters, what their masters want, or are part of their masters. Like Michael Gove is on here. I mean,
yeah.
he and Rory Stewart, who's basically currently was arguing for like the Liberal Democrats and stuff like that, who was a former Tory politician, who basically both of them basically drove the Tories into the ground. And so why are they dissenting from, quote unquote, the masters in this? That's what doesn't make much sense.
Well, simply because they have an artistic and aesthetic sense that the ecclesiastical leadership lacks. I mean, stop and think about it. You look at, say, the Cathedral of, you look at Westminster Cathedral in London, you look at the Stephansdom here in Vienna, you look at Notre Dame, and then you look at Los Angeles Cathedral. Now, who in his right mind, who with half a brain, could look at the LA Cathedral and say, oh, that's beautiful? Nobody. Unless, of course, you were Roger Cardinal Mahony. I
was going to say Mahony would have said it.
Oh, yeah, he thought it was beautiful, all right. And that sort of aesthetic sense is what's dominant in the church today. And by that, I don't mean the majority of bishops hold it. I just mean the ones who matter.
I swear, if you want to figure out if someone's delusional, put them in front of a terrible-looking church and ask them if it's pretty. If they tell you it's pretty, they're delusional.
Yeah.
At least they don't have any sense.
Nothing wrong with that, after all.
Yes. So who is Princess Michael of Kent? I want to highlight.
Princess Michael of Kent is Catholic. She was born Catholic. She married the younger brother of the Duke of Kent, who is the Queen's first cousin. Now, you've got something kind of interesting going there. The Queen's father, George VI, had several brothers, the oldest of whom was king before him, Edward VIII. But his next younger brother was the Duke of Kent. who had two sons. One, he was killed in an airplane crash in World War II. So the older boy survived him and is now Duke of Kent. And then the younger brother was Prince Michael of Kent. Interestingly enough, for the past several reigns, the king has been the head of the Grand Lodge of England in Freemasonry. But the queen could not be because women aren't allowed. And neither the Duke of Edinburgh nor Prince Charles would take on the job. So the Duke of Kent took it on. But his wife converted to Catholicism. One of his sons married a Catholic, and the younger one, Lord Nicholas Windsor, converted and is Catholic today and the head of a lot of pro-life things. Well, the Duke's younger brother, Prince Michael of Kent, married a Bavarian noble lady, and that is Princess Michael of Kent.
Okay. So we got some royalty participating in this.
Yeah.
What do you think sort of the impact of this? We've sort of looked at some of the names. You have Tom Holland, the historian, not the actor. It's not Spider-Man.
No.
Which I don't know. That might have carried more weight with this pontificate. I don't know.
Probably. Especially if he'd perform at the Holy See, but never mind.
Okay. Anyways.
Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
If he sang that song for with Andrew Lloyd Webber playing or doing the music or whatever behind it, maybe the Latin Mass can be saved.
Maybe. I mean, is he strong? Listen, blood. He's got radioactive blood. I don't know how that makes you strong, but so the song says.
It sounds like you're dying.
It sounds like it to me. I mean, if you've got radioactive blood, I don't think you're in good shape, but that's just me.
So like Andrew Lloyd Webber, he and his brother, is Andrew Lloyd Webber a Catholic? I think he is, isn't he?
I don't know. Let's find out. Let's go to Wikipedia, source of all truth.
I think he's at least like nominally, or like where he or was,
So it's like he was ordained. Let's see. Andrew Lloyd Webber, Monsignor Andrew Lloyd Webber. Ordained Archdiocese of no. Well, he's composed a Latin Requiem Mass. That's interesting.
Okay. Which is which contrasts big from like his other, musicals. Like he's a.
Yeah, it truly does, but it also shows you that he wrote Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a Tory in the House of Lords.
Well, that explains a lot.
It doesn't really say what his religion is, but as I say, he did do a Latin Requiem Mass, which shows something or other.
Maybe he's high Anglican or something, or Anglo-Catholic. I don't know.
Maybe. Let's see. No. In 1971, he said he was an agnostic, although he views Jesus as one of the great figures of history. It says he frequently. Oh, that's interesting. Now it says, yes, he's a Christian and still holds on to his beliefs. He considers himself to be a non-denominational Christian.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I don't know why. Didn't he also compose sort of elements for the coronation?
Yes. He also did the song that will be played at the current Holy Father's funeral.
Is that really?
Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what that is. So
you don't know the song Don't Cry for Me, Argentina?
I mean, that sounds familiar, but I don't know what it's from or.
It's from Evita, his musical celebrating the great heroine to the current Holy Father, Eva Peron.
Oh, well, just so you know, Charles, I don't know too much about musicals.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
well, I put you up there with the Holy Father.
He doesn't know much
might-
about.
Doesn't know much about much, but I'll bet he does know Evita.
Who's Lord Stirrup?
Who's who?
Lord Stirrup. It says he's a highly decorated marshal of the Royal Air Force. Have you heard of him?
Not offhand. Let's see. Lord Stirrup? Jock Stirrup? That's who it is.
Stirrup just sounds like it's kind of made up.
No, it's not. Former Royal Air Force commander, Knight commanding the Order of the Garter by the Queen.
Well, he just sounds like, like it's too on the nose for him to be a military guy. It's like Stirrup.
No, he is. He's had a very, very distinguished military career.
So the Pope always has meetings with, like, famous people, many who are, not Catholic necessarily. I mean, even like the socialist candidate George Galloway had a private audience with the Pope, and he told him that he should not prohibit the Latin Mass.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the Holy Father has a preference for the wealthy and the powerful.
But, like, so is this going to have any impact, or is this folly?
We'll find out.
Okay. Well, do you have a prediction? Can you give us a prediction? No. What do you mean? You lived in the what's his face's old house?
I know I lived in Christo's old house, but I have no prediction on this.
Okay.
Because, as the Holy Father, look, just recently, very recently, this past week, he excommunicated an archbishop, as you know. But what are we to make of his excommunications when he writes things like the following? And I'm quoting him from February of 2022. He says, and I quote, "No one can exclude themselves from the church. We are all saved sinners. Our holiness is the fruit of God's love manifested in Christ, who sanctifies us by loving us in our misery and saving us from it. Let's think about those who have denied the faith, who are apostates, who are the persecutors of the church, who have denied baptism. Are these also at home? Yes, these too, all of them. The blasphemers, all of them. We are brothers. This is the community of saints. The community of saints holds together the community of believers on earth and in heaven and on earth, the saints, the sinners, all." End of quote. What's to be said?
Is he just like playing,
Yeah, seems like it.
Performing?
But I have to pursue that, or I'd have to say it's sheer hypocrisy. And that's impossible. So since it can't be hypocrisy, it's all just play acting.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense unless it's just
we don't need to understand. We only need to obey and accept, do as we're told, and bark like dogs.
Is that why Tolkien didn't sign the letter?
Possibly. It could also be he didn't like some of the people who were on it. I don't know.
He was also he was also near death. Like, he was only like a year or two away.
Could be he was more interested in his own hereafter, which of course we should all make. But I mean, you're asking for certain answers, basically out of a man who's made it plain he doesn't give them. I enjoy having fun with that, I admit. But, if you come to me and you say, "What are you having for dinner tonight?" And I tell you, the Amazon looks beautiful on maps. Well, okay. You really haven't gotten an answer, have you?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to get an answer until we get an answer. I guess that makes sense.
And I highly doubt it will be on this in this pontificate. He's always made the point that he calls God the God of surprises, and he likes to make messes. That's another thing he said.
Are we sure he's not talking about himself?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He said he likes to make, he being himself, he said he likes to make messes. Well, he does. He likes confusion and ambiguity.
It's a bold strategy, but I still think it's amazing to see these people, no matter what station they are, putting their name, making it associated with the Latin Mass. When I mean, it has become basically like making you a pariah. I mean, of course, that's only within the Catholic Church.
That's only within. I mean, and this is why it's likelier to have an effect than anything by any number of Catholics would. I mean, the same way the Agatha Christie made an effect on Paul VI. If they had all been prominent Catholics, he'd have laughed. But non-Catholics count in a way that Catholics don't to these people.
How similar are Paul VI and Pope Francis?
Not very.
Okay.
Paul VI was kind of a Hamlet-like figure. I mean, one thing they have in common was that they were good at bullying people who had no power. But Paul VI would generally avoid controversy with people who did have power, whereas to the current Holy Father, it just doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah. In a weird way, that sounds more Pope-like, to not really care.
Maybe. I mean, it's one thing if you're backing up divine dogma and you've got the writ of God behind you, no matter how unpopular you are. It's another if you're just backing up whatever's coming into your head. But as he has also said so eloquently, who am I to judge?
Well, you're a Californian.
See, when my backbone was removed upon my arrival in the state, all that was taken away. And the other thing too, on Luther's anniversary back in 2018, when the Holy Father had that statue of Luther made of chocolate installed in Rome, it was very clear there that he welcomes dissent and abuse and so forth. I mean, if you're going to back up Martin Luther as he did, you need to be able to back up. You need to be able to be as insulting toward Martin Luther's opposite number, Pope Leo X. And I couldn't help but wonder when Pope Francis was praising Martin Luther, if what he meant was that we should emulate Luther by treating him the way Leo X was treated by Luther. Is that what he wants?
And the contradictions.
Oh, really?
Really? Yes. Now, it's interesting that I think it's Sir James Macmillan. He was the organizer. He had written that the Traditionis Custodes was a shattering blow to Gen Z Catholics. It's interesting that these people would be sort of looking out for the youth.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, don't forget, as artists, every artist wants to appeal to the youth because that's his future, the future of his work. You see, I mean, I'm always happy when I find that young people are reading my stuff because it means that there's a chance to be read in 20 years. You see what I mean?
It's definitely going to happen. You'll be read 20 years from now.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, unless I die, I'll be still reading your stuff.
Well, that's comforting.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I didn't care about that, if that didn't matter to me, I'd have a very different outlook on life, and I would probably write very differently.
So is this just the psychology of either of artists?
Partly, but only partly.
What's the other part?
The times we live in. I mean, in a way, one of the things about one of the things about my heavens, the thought went right out of my head. This is what comes of interviewing me on a warm day in Trumau.
I should have checked the weather.
Yeah, well, it's all right. We'll soldier on. But seriously, no, I mean, the truth of the matter is that the current leadership of the church really are not very interested in the future. And you could say that's wrong. You could say it's short-sighted. You could say it's stupid. And I'd agree with you. But it's the way it is. Remember when the Holy Father was complaining one morning that he said, whenever I read about a diocese or an order that has a lot of young vocations, I'm always worried. There might be rigidity there. Well, what he calls rigidity is actually growth. And what he's afraid of is that the church will have a life of its own, to which, in great part, he and the aspirations of his age group are irrelevant.
It's interesting to sort of be in a position where well, basically, I guess there is no future for your viewpoint, more or less.
No, not really. And I mean, the thing with these people is they've locked themselves into 1968. And I can understand that. I remember 68. But that's not the future. And it's actually not even really the past, except for a small piece of it. Yeah. It's just where they felt alive. We're at this dawn of a new church, and we're remaking everything, and everything's going to be different, and we're going to do it all in our own image. We're going to be wonderful. Well, unfortunately, if you spend your whole life that way, your whole career that way, and it doesn't happen, and now you're in your 70s or 80s, even older, and you've got young people interested in those very things that you spent your life trying to destroy, how do you think it's going to make you feel?
Frustrated and upset.
Of course, yes. It'll make you feel like your entire life was a waste of time, which of course it was. But nobody wants to hear that. You know, the last thing anybody wants to hear is, you know, the world would be a better place if you had never been born. And what younger Catholics don't realize is that unconsciously, that is how they make these people feel.
Are they having It's a Wonderful Life nightmares?
I wouldn't go that far because they can't let themselves think about it too much.
Okay.
But I would say that somebody like dear old Cardinal Cockroach, the Holy Father, Cardinal Gregory of Washington, others, not to name names, but people of this sort, Cardinal Seepage in Chicago, people of this sort would feel very, very upset at young people glomming on to tradition. And you know what's interesting too? When the Indo came in 85, and we were all just grateful to be able to have a 1962 Mass, no one ever dreamt of hearkening back to the before time in 1955. You know, the whole Restore the 54 thing has really come up in the past 10 or 15 years. And even despite trash can custodians has made some real leaps. I can only suppose it's because uh, it answers a deep set and natural need in the hearts of the younger faithful.
Do the bishops feel like they're captaining the Titanic and there are holes and they're trying to plug the holes, but it's but
a little bit like that. Yeah, I mean, because the way they treat the Tridentine Mass, it's like leprosy. We've got to restrict it, and we've got to send the congregations that have it to the gyms. That's it. But we'll still charge them money. We'll abuse them. We'll smack them around, and then put our hands out for dough.
Well, they're acting like if the Latin Mass became succeeded the or took a place in society and in the church, reminiscent to what it did before, then everyone would get drowned out, like that there would be no purpose for the Novus Ordo.
Well, firstly, though, the problem is that all of this is on the heels of COVID, when so many of our bishops showed us that they don't even believe in the Novus Ordo.
Well,
yeah. I mean, again, I hate to intrude reality into any issue, but for 2 and in some places 3 years, they told us they don't believe we need the Mass at all. Novus Ordo, Tridentine, Byzantine, Chaldean, Armenian, shut it all down. Let's sit in our ivory towers. Now, there were some honorable exceptions, but I assure you, the Holy See wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
And now to turn around and lay down the law with the fullness of apostolic power. You know what? Why don't you do what you were doing 3 years ago? Go hide under your bed.
Has Pope Francis been watching the movie Beckett too much?
I don't know what he's been watching. Probably Fellini's Roma.
What's that?
Or maybe the Satyricon. I don't know, but I think he's probably more Fellini than anything else. He's put the rest of us in a Fellini film.
But I don't know what that is, so please explain.
Federico Fellini was a sort of surrealist Italian filmmaker of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Does that help? No, it doesn't.
No, it really doesn't.
Well, you know what? The Holy Father will know. All right. Here we go to... No, I don't mind doing this. Wikipedia, source of all truth. See, I always go to Wikipedia because it's written in modernese.
Charles, this is your lot in life. Because if I had hands, I would look it up myself.
Oh, that's it. Blame the victim. Wait a minute. You forget it. Anyway,
yeah, whatever.
Well, I don't know where we're going with this stuff. But Fellini, yeah, he says he was an Italian, 1920 to 1993, Italian film director and screenwriter. He was known for his distinctive style, which blends fantasy and Baroque images with earthiness. He was recognized as one of the greatest and most influential filmmakers of all time.
You're telling me that that Pope Francis likes Baroque?
And only as an image, as a background. You remember when he did his speech in the rain at the beginning of COVID, and he did it in front of a beautiful Baroque crucifix, which was wrecked by being left out in the rain. But after all, it's his property, I guess, nobody else's. Not that we're bitter.
I did. That was probably best moment when he was doing the what was it, the blessing during COVID.
Well,
I mean, other than the fact no one else was there.
Well, I guess one of the things that really sticks in my head from that time and influences my dislike of the current authoritarianism coming from certain sectors of the church is that during COVID, some of my favorite parishes in my home archdiocese of LA They were shut down, of course, by order of the Archbishop, acting on order of the state, though in so many places the church exceeded what the state demanded of them. And then in other places, the church actually did push back as far as it could or would. But what bothered me was that the website after website, parish after parish, said, make a perfect act of contrition, make a spiritual communion, donate here.
The last part, gold.
Well, I'll do 2 of those things, Patrissime, but there's one of them ain't happening. Now, when you tell the Catholic people for 2 years that they don't need any kind of mass, not really, where do you get the gall to persecute the holders of one particular kind?
Where do you get the gall to ask for money?
I couldn't tell you. But asking for something for nothing is never a pretty trait.
Especially in America.
Yeah. We are the kings of no pal. You wash my hand, I'll wash yours. Otherwise, bupkis.
Yes.
But I mean, it astonishes me. This latest thing with the pilgrimage to Oviedo. At the last minute, Cardinal Cockroach, with his apostolic beauty, declares there will be no Tridentine Mass for the pilgrims. Again, I can only wish that he would be where he was 2 years ago, hiding under his bed, hoping that the angel of the apocalypse didn't take him someplace fun.
Yeah.
It is unconscionable. It would have been bad anyway, but especially so soon after this worldwide act of cowardice to be throwing their weight around.
Sometimes I almost forget COVID even happened. Maybe
you're
I'm just
supposed to.
I'm just
You're not.
Yeah. Well, Gen Z, we're basically like we're like moths, or not moths, whatever. We're easily forgetting things. It's just like moving on to the next thing.
We're moving on to the next abuse. No,
yes.
Look, I'll tell you, COVID should never, ever, ever be forgotten for one simple reason. I said it at the time, I'll say it again and again and again. Our masters in church and state, when they had us put our masks on, they took theirs off. And we got to see the truth of things. If they tell us to bark, we'll bark like dogs. If they tell us to clap, we'll clap like seals. That's the way it is. Now, we may not like that. We need to remember that the illusion of control is, for the most part, just that. Because if we realize that, if we accept that, then you know what? You might get the opportunity to do something in the real world, somehow, some way, someday. And I that would be my question if I were in a position when a parish priest or a bishop were to say to me, well, we're going to close down the Latin Mass here. My response would be just close down the church the way you did during COVID. Then we don't have this. We don't even have to talk about it.
It's very sad.
Now, we've got some interesting questions here. John, that's not his real name. I'll bet it's Oswald.
That'd be a great name. I like it.
Might be Oswald or Percy, which would not be so great a name.
Should we call him Oswald going forward?
Yeah, he's Oswald from now on.
John,
Oswald.
Not real name. Do you like being Oswald? Let us know in the comments.
Even if you don't like being Oswald. But you probably already answered this question, but I don't understand why this is happening. This is like the loyal subject wondering why his king is persecuting him. Well, there is one major difference, and that is that loyalty is not something that modern leadership really understand. Modernity modernity is, as it's called, is very corrosive of loyalty, of ties between family members, kings and subjects, popes and subjects. And they don't, you've had the Holy Father say over and over that he's not a king, he's not a monarch. You're damn straight he isn't, because they have real ties to their people. And when the popes, I wrote a piece, actually, on the republicanization of the church and how the relationship of the Catholic to the Pope has changed in my lifetime. Now, the Holy Father isn't much of a father. I won't speculate on his holiness, of course. It's not up to me. But he certainly acts more like the chairman of a corporation than like a king or a pastor of souls. And that's true of a lot of bishops, not just the highest. The church is not a monarchy. No, it's not. It's become a despotism. You're right. And believe me, there's a world of difference between a despotism and a monarchy. In a monarchy, presuming it's an effective monarch, he's hedged about by tradition. In theory, there are also things he can do, but in reality, the weight of tradition, the weight of his inheritance, keeps him from doing a lot of things. That used to be the way it was with the papacy. Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore.
It really is the continuation of basically ever since the Enlightenment, the creation of basically dictatorships, and replacing monarchies. And there wasn't like a clear, nobody overthrew the popes of the old style, but basically the culture has imbued them with sort of the dictatorial manner. And this isn't just, it's not like we're not just singling out Pope Francis or anything like this. This is a mentality that has been going on for much longer than that.
Well, it basically conflates the person with his office. I don't care if you're the mayor of Slackjaw Flats or the president or the king or the pope. Your office is greater than you are. And that was something that earlier periods understood. When you speak of the phrase the common good, you speak of the phrase servants of the people. Even Franz Joseph, God help us, called himself his country's first bureaucrat. And he meant that in the sense of the first official working for the people. That was how he meant bureaucrat in that context.
Well, bureaucrat also in the sense that he's not going away until he dies.
Yeah.
Right?
Not a political figure, but you're right. You're absolutely right. Not a political figure, but a part of the machinery.
Mm-hmm.
And in a real sense, we're pulling Franz Joseph out of nowhere for no reason. But
yeah, I don't know where he came from.
I don't either, but he suddenly joined us. Hello, Your Imperial and Royal Majesty. It's great to have you with us. We hope you'll enjoy yourself this afternoon. But please have a cigar. Smoking is permitted in that side of the studio.
Well, is he haunting Vienna? Is that what's going on?
I don't know where he is. I can't see him, but we'll presume he's here. I can't even smell the cigar smoke. But but it being him, he's got to have one. No, but the thing is that as the years went on with him, even people who knew him said he became ever less and less a human being, and more the embodiment of his people's hopes and wishes, a sort of automaton. And he'd get up every morning at 3 a.m., set to work, go to bed at midnight, day after day after day after day, till he died. Well, he did violence to his nature, and in a certain sense, all office holders should. There's an old Latin saying, which in the English is, what is permissible to Jove, Jupiter, is not permissible to an ox. But we once understood that the reverse is true too. What is permissible to an ox is not permissible to Jove. I can remember under Tony Blair, the last real Lord Chancellor, Lord Irvin complained and whined about the funny costume he had to wear as part of his office. Oh, poor young man, all that power, and you got to wear a funny costume. So terrible for him. I feel so bad for him. This is the epitome of wrong, because the costume is part of the office. And if you don't want the costume, my little mushroom, you should reject the office. Not, oh, well, a modern person like me wouldn't do. I don't care if you're modern. I don't care if you're antique. I don't even care if you're a pile of dead rats. What is needed is a person who sits in whatever office he holds and attempts, it's not always easy, to submit his precious little personality to the requirements of the office, which ultimately always means what? The requirements of the subjects. You know, Christ at the Last Supper gave us the image of Christian kingship, and that was the washing of feet. And it wasn't a phony humility. Here, the God of heaven and earth, and humanly speaking, the heir of David, chose to wash the feet of his closest confederates. And ever after, on Maundy Thursday, in Catholic courts from Portugal to Russia, monarchs would wash the feet of the poor in emulation of him whose kingship they tried to participate in. The Holy Father still does it, but of course, to make a point, he changed the rules because he could do that, because he's on top. He can do what he wants because he's in charge. He, like so many moderns, he's not capable of submitting his ego to the office in which he sits. And you know, again, as you said earlier, it's not a question simply of banging on the Pope. It runs through everything. It's why they tried to simplify the coronation service. It's why presidents don't wear morning coats at inaugurations anymore. You know, it's uncomfortable. Oh, I'm becoming the most powerful person in the United States, and to be uncomfortable for a whole day would be so tough for me.
Maybe Trump will bring it back this time around.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
I know.
I will say though, you know, my standard joke here is that if I myself were, you know, your city councilman, and I had this view, and you came to me, and I said, well, you know, Connor, I want you to know that being your city councilman is the fulfillment of my life's pilgrimage. It's really made me who and what I am, and I feel so fulfilled as your city councilman. And you say, Councilman Coulombe, that's great. Are you ever going to get the potholes filled, maybe get the trash picked up, increase police patrols so the crime rate goes down? Oh, Connor, that's part of the old paradigm of what a city councilman was about. I'm a big picture person. I'm part of the new city councilman. Okay, Councilman Coulombe, I get the feeling that you don't really do a hell of a lot. Well, that's not true. I do an awful lot for this constituency. I sit on council meetings. I stay informed. No, I get that part. What do you actually do that's useful? Define useful. Well, what Councilman Coulombe needs is to be kicked out of office, is what he needs. But I'm afraid that is pretty general. So, I mean, the weird relationship between church, state, and world is that they all reflect each other, historically speaking.
Yeah.
You know, in the Middle Ages, when feudalism was the major thing, bishops often resembled feudal barons. Today, when the corporate executive is the norm of power, guess what they often reflect?
Yeah.
Oh, well, now there's a nice thing here. Oswald tells us if more politicians wore funny hats and said their drivel, maybe more people would wake up to their drivel. Or maybe that's why they won't wear funny hats.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about that reminds him of Central and South America, whose independent countries are the ones who massacre them, like Guatemala in the 80s, and Spain is treated as the devil?
Okay, firstly, that's a hate fact.
Who's it a hate fact to?
Oswald has just put out a hate fact.
Who's it a hate fact to, though?
It's a hate fact to defenders of Latin American, or for that matter, North American independence. And it's an attack on everybody who's struggling to decolonize literature departments in Ivy League universities.
Yeah.
What?
None.
Oh, I get it. So they can spell drivel, but I don't get that privilege. Well, let me tell you something, mister. I could be a gender studies professor at Harvard like anybody else.
I would love to see that. Can you? You should.
I'd be blown out of my office.
Well, no, you should do videos of like you pretending to be a gender studies teacher.
The problem is I'd have to read a lot more gender studies crap, and I've only got so much.
It's not like they read anything.
Hate fact.
They're just making it up as they go along.
Hate fact.
Okay, how is this whole podcast not a hate fact?
It is. This whole podcast is a hate fact. Everything in it is a hate fact.
See,
I mean,
Charles,
Nico says the states compete with God for worship. Hate fact, Nico. Hate fact.
That's called fascism.
Hate fact.
That is fascism, right?
No, it's only fascism if Benito Mussolini is doing it. When the current leadership do it, it's acceptance of goodness.
Yes.
What?
All hail our masters, and and just remember, Charles and I are just playing characters. Don't attack us.
No, we're just souls whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let us be misunderstood. I seriously though, it does get almost beyond the point of satire, but through it all, and this takes us back to our original reason for being: focus on the Mass of the Sacraments and get them how and as you can, and don't worry about the yapping. I mean, I'll put it to this way. I've had, I don't know how many people tell me I can't go to the Tridentine Mass if it's put out by the SSPX. How many people have told me you can't go to the Novus Ordo? How many people have told me you can't do this, you can't do that? Well, I'll tell you a little secret. I need the Blessed Sacrament, and I will get it any way I can. Because a somewhat more important authority, don't help me, Jesus Christ said, unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you shall not have life in you. And the older I get, the truer that seems. Nobody else is going to receive for me. Nobody else is going to do for me what he alone can do. And as I say, I've noticed that when push came to shove, i.e. during COVID, the people who at the moment were yapping the loudest were silent. Let them keep that silence. And if they can't keep it, let's not forget it. When we hear the mouths going, just remember what they were saying in 2021.
Yep. Well, Charles, you have this special magic ability.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. That magic ability is to first lower my spirits and then to raise them higher than they were before.
I do my best because, in that I look to my dad, and I'm not being funny. My father, on the one hand, was a great man for accepting reality in all its beauty and horror, and reminding that the reality we see is nothing to compare with the reality we hope for beyond it. And that's where our true joy ultimately has to come from. Dad used to say that everything on earth will disappoint you. He used to say about individuals. He'd say, everyone you know will betray or at least dreadfully disappoint you. And the one consolation you've got is that you will betray or at least dreadfully disappoint everyone you know. And it's quite true. So you have to, you take all of this and you bear in mind that we live in a messy world. Everyone else is stuck with what we're stuck with. We have to keep our eyes on the prize, in the words of the old civil rights song. That's the only thing that makes life livable. When you see the prospect of heaven, the possibility of heaven, that all of the joys we have in this life, whatever they may be, are amplified. They're foretastes of heaven. And the annoyances and the problems, well, the difficulties we've just got to work our way through on our way there. Get rid of heaven, and it becomes misery. As again, another line of my dad's was, if you go to hell, this is as close to heaven as you'll ever get. But if you go to heaven, this is as close to hell as you'll ever get.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, before we wrap up, Oswald has one more question. He has you prisoner apparently. Now that I have you here, I'm interested in chivalry and knight's relationship to his lady. Can it be platonic? I aim to ask a woman to be mine. What are their duties and etiquette to each other?
Well, firstly, if you'll undo the rope so I can put my hands up. Thank you, Oswald. Thank you very much for that. Well, when it says, can it be platonic? Well, yes, it should be. Now you aim to ask a woman to be mine. You mean to say you're going to get engaged? If you're going to get engaged, well, you're affectionate, but to a point and no further. I shouldn't have to tell you this stuff. Your duties and etiquette toward each other. I mean, again, I don't understand. Nico. Well, you mean your lady is in? You don't want to get married to her. Well, that's a little hard to handle these days. It's really not a part of our social context. I would simply say that if you're that interested in her, you should think about marrying her. In which case, all the usual things apply. That would be my advice. The medieval context doesn't, as Nico just put out, nothing can exist outside of its context in medieval times, unless, of course, you go to the one in Orange County or the one in Florida, or you hang around the Renaissance Fair. Other than that, it doesn't really exist. And I wanted to ask to be my lady. Well, it is complicated. Believe me, I want to marry her. Well, then all I can say is ask her to marry you. And if it's a complicated situation, see what you can do to uncomplicate it. Discuss it with her. I mean, she obviously will know better than I do what the situation is and why it's complicated. And I'm really good with that. I'm good for her knowing better than I do. I really am. Just discuss it with her, if whatever the problems may be, if they can be worked out, then you'll need her to help work them out, because there are two people involved, actually. And if you can't, well, then you need to stop perhaps looking elsewhere, and so does she.
Be direct. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to lose anything by being honest. Unless it's, you've got a wonderful personality, but I find your looks repellent, or vice versa. You look beautiful, but gosh, you're nasty. Either of those would not be very good, frankly.
Well, Charles, let's wrap it up here. For anybody who's interested, last week was the 4th of July, and I did an episode of 5 things to rethink about the American Revolution. So if you're interested in that topic, I suggest you go find that episode on my channel. And Charles, we can find you Tumblr House, the European Conservative, 1 Peter 5, the Never Ending Struggle. This is a never ending place to find you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anywhere else?
Golly, European Conservative, Catholicism.org, Massive Ages, golly, where else? 1 Peter 5, and Crisis there.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless everyone. Bye.
Take care, y'all.